US President Barack Obama says his worst mistake in the past 8 years was mishandling the crisis in Libya after the US-backed ousting of the dictator Gaddafi in 2011. In an interview for the BBC, he added, "That's a lesson I now apply when we are asked to intervene militarily. Do we have a plan for the day after?" In March 2011, a coalition of US-backed Western countries, including the UK and France, launched missile and airstrikes on Libya following a national uprising against Colonel Gaddafi. After his defeat, the ensuing power vacuum allowed militant groups, including a Daesh affiliate, to gain power in the country and exploit its natural resources. Yet the US helped to create Al-Qaeda and ISIL, and it is claimed America still provides training and logistical support to terrorist groups in Iraq and Syria. What are Washington's goals in the Middle East? How might we describe America's alliance with Saudi Arabia? And how should we describe US foreign policy? These are the simple questions we sought to answer. Now, Obama says the mishandling of the crisis in Libya after the war has been his worst mistake. But experts say it has caused the worst terrorism crisis and the worst refugee crisis in history. Was it just a mistake or a crime? We asked the American public.
I think it was a mistake. I'm not sure he realized the implications going into it. But I'm not sure that any human would have realized it. You know, it's hard to predict what's going to happen in these situations.
I'd say it was a mistake. I wouldn't qualify it as a crime.
I can't judge that.
I definitely think it was a crime because at this point, with all of the information that's floating around freely in the world, a lot of people, including those emails that went out, a lot of people know a lot about how that Libyan whole scandal, it was planned. And, you know, it's not like it was an accident, the after effects. It seems like it would be a perfect follow-up to a plan to destabilize a nation. And then everything that comes from that then gives all of the power players an excuse to come in and do whatever they want.
We invited our experts to consider if Obama's mishandling of the Libyan crisis and its impact on terrorism and refugees was his worst mistake or a crime.
It's actually, in our view, the Libyan people view, it's a crime actually. And all related to the third world issue, the whole conflict between North and South. Actually, nobody gets immune against this imperialism thinkings for the North against the South. Libya not exception, even the whole region, I mean, from South Asia to Latin America, including Africa. Actually, he's telling a liar, Obama, during the different things, actually, because he tried to open the way for Hillary Clinton to go to the presidency. He tried to blame everything, collect everything, whereas in the truth, when the Libyan officials met the Obama representative at Tunisia, probably in April 2011, they tell them what's going on in Benghazi and in different areas, that the extremists, the terrorists, the criminal groups, they're destroying, not saying that they need a kind of liberating freedom and democracy. And we see that actually the Libyan people now, they are very, very awakened actually. What happened, they pay a heavy price, very painful price. They know that's a crime. They know that's no such things called democracy and freedom when they West come over to the third world countries. It's related to the wealth, related to the corrupt, the political regime or the political issue. Now, what we see, they're just handling the dead squad leader, the warlord people. They are just managing them from one place to other place. Whereas the most people now, they are behind the Libyan army, fighting the terrorists. Even they fighting the all the Western. When you go to the social media, where this is open, open media, it's a social media things, and you find how their attitude is changed much.
The attack on Libya in 2011 was definitely an imperialist crime. It's quite rich now of President Obama to start talking about how Libya was his greatest mistake. It wasn't a mistake. He was very much vested, as was the rest of the United States political class, in the destruction of Libya. They knew exactly who they're allying up with. The reason why Obama is being so critical now is not because he has any sympathy for the Libyan people. It's not that. It's because he's sniping specifically at the British and French. Libya was always led by the British and French in 2011. It was the United States that had to do all the heavy lifting in terms of the military destruction. And during 2011, the leading politicians and army personnel of France, Britain, and the United States were openly bickering with each other in the media, and that still continues today. It's nothing but an inter-imperialist conflict between the imperialist powers as to who can dominate Libya today. That's the basis of Obama's so-called mistake.
Let's be clear, the US helped to create Al-Qaeda and ISIL. How does this compare with US government claims about being a world leader in creating peace? We asked the public for their views.
I don't believe that the US helped create Al-Qaeda or ISIS.
Well, I think the way that the United States helped create these organizations was by promoting its ideals, and I don't think that that is a crime. And I think the United States really focuses on emphasizing peace within its people and promoting everyone.
I think there's a thin line that can be drawn between foresight and hindsight. We can't exactly see what happens in the future. I think there have been some large mistakes in the past, and many of those are being reconciled by President Obama.
I see the United States as a world leader that doesn't make 100% best decisions all the time.
I feel like claims are a big part of politics. Even the candidates that are running now, they make claims. Throughout time, people always have made claims. We want to have world peace. We want to have intercontinental peace, peace within nations, amongst nations, tribes. But that's usually not the case. If you can trace information that says that the United States government helped create two of the larger terrorist organizations that they've been plastering all over the news saying that are the bad guys, then that logic means that the government is the bad guy and that they're not trying to create peace, but in fact they're just trying to, I'll say, fill up their bowl, so to say.
I think we often create more trouble than we solve.
What is our experts' assessment of the relationship between US claims to lead the world in peacemaking versus its role in helping to create Al-Qaeda and ISIL?
It's actually didn't. Even when you go outside, for example, here in the UK, wherever in Europe, wherever you are in a plane, sit with any ordinary Western guy, talk with him. He will say to you, not you, you are suffering from the ISIS, suffering from the Qaeda, you suffer from the Malot, they destroyed everything. He will say actually to you that is their government, their intelligence system who create this mess. So even not the third world peoples or not the Libyan peoples or whatever, they suffering from the terrorists, actually they know those they try to manipulate this country post-war or post-conflict or post-change, whatever, and they create this issue. We saw what happened in Iraq, still going on, and still the money, the corrupted people, the corrupted politician people, they still flowing the money under the table. Where? Back here to most of the Western banks. Why didn't cut that pipe? Why didn't bring them? Why didn't bring the warlords in Libya to the ICC, International Criminal Courts? Why didn't we see such things? So how they claim themselves they are creating a base, whereas they are now trying to manipulate a government in Tripoli and ISIS controlling Sirte, and nobody talk about it. Even Kobler, even the 5 ambassadors for the 5 countries who's controlling the Security Council in the United Nations. So it's even not questionable, this kind of matter. They are actually creating things. Some of them, not the good of them, they are good people to try to do something with our country. They have good relationship, but actually we have kind of I can't say it's a criminal. It's not very clear way actually how they manage it.
United States has never been interested in peace, except the peace of the graveyard of native people and oppressed peoples, perhaps. The genesis of the United States itself was an enterprise in the genocide against the native people of the Americas, and then they exported that model and that policy globally. When the United States says it's for peace and then is the head of the pyramid along with the United Kingdom in promoting terrorism in the Muslim world by use of these proxy death squads such as Daesh and Nusra and Al-Qaeda, etc. It just shows very clearly that it's nothing but rank hypocrisy and deceit when they talk about peace. No, at the moment, specifically in the majority Muslim world, the US and UK foreign policy is to destroy and ruin and divide by means of their proxy death squad forces.
Many experts claim the US military continues to provide training and logistical support to various terrorist groups in Iraq and Syria. What does this say about US aims in the region? The public said this.
I think that the United States has their own agenda and they know exactly what they want to accomplish, and how they think that it's going to end in peace, I'm not really sure, but I think that they are very calculated in what they're doing.
I think that says speculation. I need to see more research on that.
It's complicated to find allies that you can rely on that share our values, I guess.
Well, I also can't say for certain whether or not those claims are true. I do know that we support certain groups in the region, but of course I don't have a clearance, so I can't say for sure where that money is going or what it's going toward. You know, I think that I trust the government, the U.S. government, to make the right decisions and to protect the citizens of our country, and to try and do good.
I think our aims are crazy.
Well, I cannot say something more on that. You know, it has to be more informed.
If I had a world power under my control, I would want to have as many soldiers as possible. So regardless of the terrorism and these things like that, they're loose terms, really it just seems like expansion to me. If I wanted to gain access to your village or neighborhood, I would definitely want to make sure that I had people who are loyal to me and were willing to fight and die for me there. So if I train people, regardless of what they're doing, then they'll become an ally to me. I can paint whatever picture I want, but at the end of the day, now I have more soldiers. So I think that's all it is that they're just making a larger army.
Given the claims that America continues to provide training and logistical help to terrorist groups in Iraq and Syria, what do our experts feel this says about American goals there?
Actually, creating a mess when you say that they offer some people why they are supporting ISIS, why they supporting the terrorist groups in different areas. And who is the terrorist? That's why they are try to run away from the proper term for the tourism. So why? Because they are playing around it, creating the mess. Sometimes they bring them in the table of negotiation. But that is because they need those groups to create more mess.
It's common knowledge that takfiri terrorist ideologies come from Saudi Arabia, a nation strongly supported by the US. American Senator Bob Graham confirmed 911 was helped by the Saudi regime. So how do the public describe the US's alliance with Saudi Arabia?
Probably not a good relationship. Should probably sever that relationship.
Like I said, I think the United States has their own agenda, and I think that everything that they do is calculated and has been debated, and I think that to say that any of us really know exactly what they're behind, it would be naive because we don't hear everything.
Not perfect. Complicated. Yeah.
I don't have any knowledge of that, so I wouldn't be able to describe that.
I really don't know enough about it.
The U.S. has oil ties with the leaders of Saudi Arabia.
I don't know. There's a lot of money going in between those two. You know, at the end of the day, that's what I like. That's what I look at it as. It's money.
So we know takfiri terrorist ideologies owe much to Saudi Arabia. How do our experts describe America's alliance and support for this regime, despite its involvement with 911?
If anyone, sometimes people ask about what's the relation of the Saudi Arabia to the terrorist groups in the region, with the United States and other parts, with the Islamic world in the third part. This kind of questions actually now the Saudi Arabia in a complete mess. Unfortunately, we like Haram, we like to go Hajj and go Umrah, but the problem is they mishandling and they mistrusted the United Nations. Now probably in a few years coming, they will play the card of Saudi Arabia. There is a problem for Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia support the terrorist groups, allow some kind of Islamic ideology, which is nonsense, not belong to the Islam, to being created to fight in Afghanistan during 80s. And those people, actually, they came back to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, they need to send them again out of the Saudi Arabia to keep everything in Saudi Arabia peace and calm. But what they create miss in the other parts. Now this ideology, if I say to you that the what called him himself is a prince or the governor of Sirte for the ISIS groups, is actually a Saudi guy. This is a national security threat for the Saudis. So now the Saudis, they try to create a Salafi, something armed against those kind of ISIS, and they're still playing with the flame, and they are sitting in a barrel of TNT, in a barrel of so that's the problem, and there's no trust whatsoever with the other peoples like United States and things, because they are playing with their economy states, with their interest, not with the other people interest. So whatever the Saudi Arabia put in the United States banks, whatever they put in a French bank or United Kingdom bank, they will keep making them.
Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is nothing but the mini-me of the United States and the United Kingdom. Although it's a Daesh state, Riyadh, nevertheless it's a Daesh state that was constituted and instituted by support historically in the 19th century by the United Kingdom, and then after the Second World War had a particularly primary strategic relationship with the United States. Riyadh promotes this supremacism, which is a framework of supremacism that's taken from colonialism and imperialism. So when we understand this terrorism, we should understand that Saudi Arabia, although it's a major player in the region, is a small bit player, is a junior partner to the United Kingdom and the United States.
The US invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq and Vietnam in the past have killed several millions of innocent people. How do the public describe US foreign policy?
I think the best description of it would be we need to stop giving foreign aid to countries that don't support us and that we don't support. So it just doesn't make sense to bomb a country and then to pay to fix it back up. So it's pointless.
I really don't know how I would describe it. I do feel like we have a lot of work to do. Obviously, who wants anybody to die in the world? So, I'm not going to say it's horrible because somebody's perfect, but we have a lot of work to do.
We try to set an example for the rest of the world. Usually is done with a very heavy hand, but it is done with strength.
Complex. I would say very complex.
Well, I think you have different set of circumstances. I think Vietnam and Iraq were enormous mistakes that led to very bad consequences. I think Afghanistan was a different story because it was ruled by a government that explicitly shielded an organization that had attacked the United States. I think that's a different situation.
The U.S. foreign policy is that there is no foreign nations and that everything on the planet belongs to the United States, and that one way or the other, the United States will take control of it.
We invited our experts to describe, in their own words, their view of US foreign policy in the light of the Afghanistan, Iraq and Vietnam invasions.
The main problem is actually to the region, all of the region, is the foreign policy for the United States and for the 5 countries who are controlling the United Nations Security Council. And obvious actually. And this one probably we didn't bring it to light, but we come to our minds because we suffer from this problem. We live the pain, our family, our kids live the pain of this kind of foreign policy, even with many messages from the good people, of Libyan good people. They send, they have the connection with their foreign officers of all those countries, and they tell them what's the good truths, what's the good for our country. We get out whatever the country's been through, it's a past. But because they have different agenda to continue the mess in the region, so there's no good and firm foreign policy for the United States or for those countries. It's just playing and milking the region and creating more mess and more innocent life. Of course, when you're creating a mess, you're playing with the human being lives. Of course, the innocent peoples will pay the price.
US foreign policy is part and parcel of the historical colonial and imperialist presence on the planet. Its presence it manifests in complex ways, but basically it's defined by the pursuit of the maximum amount of profits and wealth, and by doing so they're ready to conduct genocide and looting not only on a nationwide scale but on a regional and continental wide scale. So this is the nature of not only the United States but the system of imperialism, which includes as well the leading imperialist countries of France, the United Kingdom and others as well. But it's a complex thing. It pursues its wealth and domination hegemony by military might and genocide, etc. But also in terms of the coloniality, the spectrum of colonial oppressions, coloniality and imperialism negatively impacts and traumatizes every single relationship between humans and the planet today, and also humans and the conceptual nature of who they are and how they see themselves and their histories, i.e. a philosophical, a faith system, a ontological and epistemological genocide and oppression as well.
Repeatedly, US wars have demonstrated America's ruthlessness and willingness to use lethal force. Washington's support for terrorism also causes deep anger against America around the world. The US invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq and Vietnam in the past have killed and maimed millions of innocent people. It is for all these reasons that many condemn the US as the bringer of war and destruction, not peace and stability.